Welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show, year 13. Will we survive year 13? Been a long time. And of course, I just want to comment on year 13. As we know, my story I've told a billion times of why I do this radio show is when I was 17, testicular cancer. I went through that hell. I'm fine now, of course. Then my dad died a year or so later. Or so, a few years. I always mix it up. But then I start to have weird paranormal stuff, which I think some of it was him communicating. And then there was weirder stuff like UFOs, and people were like, Jeffrey, I think you're attracting these here. And I don't know what they were still to this day, spirits or UFOs or ET, I don't know. But that's why we do the show. And of course, we started off as a little chat interview with people when I used to do this with Jeremy Vianney a long time ago. And we started interviewing William Burns, Nick Redfern, and these little chat room interviews like AOL where you type, no audio. And I think even Joe showed up there, and there was like a little buzz going, and that's how I met Joe. We interviewed him there. It was just like a text, like old school, like AOL, no audio. It was weird. I remember being on the phone with Stanton Friedman and helping him the whole time. It was like on there for 2 hours with Stanton Friedman. He's passed now, God rest his soul. But year 13. So basically, it all happened from seeing weird stuff and me going, what the hell happened to me? And then asking other people. And here we are. But tonight's guest, Michelle Desrochers, and Jay McNicholas, our host. And good to have you here, Michelle. Did I pronounce your name correctly? I'm Georgia, so I have to be careful.
Yeah, it's close. It's Desrochers.
Desrochers.
Desrochers. Yeah.
Okay.
Tongue twister. I married it initially and became a professional name, so I kind of ended up keeping it. So here we are.
All right, dog. Quit squeaking back there. But it will stop in a minute. You better stop it. All right. Well, let's see here, Michelle. First off, we get that painting is amazing. You got that in the background and everything.
Just for you guys.
I love it. And then
Thank you.
Christina just got me something for my dog. I may put it on its grave, but I've kind of like liking it lately, so I don't know what I'm going to do. But it's this solar thing that lights up for the dog because he passed. So
Oh,
that's what
sorry.
it's running on solar light. It's his heart back there.
No, that's cute.
Oh, here's another cool thing we found at Walmart, which I shouldn't probably do this because the dogs will go crazy,
Uh-oh.
but I'll just do it
Oh,
for
I love
a
them.
second.
I love it. I love Gizmo.
Yeah.
Mine
Anyway,
doesn't sing. I've got an original one from the movie. Like, I think I'm aging myself a little bit because I still have it, but it's not that fancy at all.
That's one from Nika, NECA. It's like a company, but it does the audio and stuff. We found it at Walmart.
That is
And then, of
awesome.
course, I was going around doing it, with people walking by are like, what the hell is that? And then I started mimicking it with a whistle and going from there. But well, let's start off. I know you had mentioned before this Dacre Stoker. I'm familiar with him, and I know he has several books, but there's one in particular, and I have it. I just haven't read it yet, but it has to do with something with a prequel with Dracula meeting Bram Stoker in a tower. And I hear there's going to be a movie about it and everything. I need to read it, but I know the book, and I have some of his other ones too. But that one supposedly did really well, and I think they're making it into a movie.
They are. That would be Dracula, and they are making a movie out of it. So he's brilliant. He's just brilliant. I have read the book, and I think you'll really enjoy it. I don't want to give it away, so but it's a fantastic book. It's not quite what you think, and it's just sort of like it's a big wow factor.
Definitely want to read it, and he's related to Bram Stoker. What's the relation exactly?
His great uncle, granduncle. Yeah, he's like the great or great grand nephew of Bram Stoker, and he's also the head of the Bram Stoker estate. Basically, I think he's the only one that figured they would take it on, and works with the entire Stoker family basically to maintain it. And they've got all kinds of merchandise and out there now, and he does a lot of tours throughout Romania and Scotland, because Bram did spend quite a bit of time in Scotland in the summers writing Dracula.
There was some version of Dracula I got, and I know they sent me the review copy, Powers of Darkness. It was like some different kind of copy of the original manuscript that they put out or something like that. That was different, but I didn't. It seemed like the same thing, but some stuff added to it. But
There's so
definitely,
many out there. It's hard to keep track of them all, you
yeah,
know. I love the original, but then I'm a big fan of Bram Stoker or of Bram Stoker's Dracula, you know, the Gary Oldman version.
love it. Last night it was funny. I haven't been to a bar in years, but we went to one last night, me and Christina, and there was like these country dudes there, and one of them we were talking. He goes, "What's your favorite Dracula movie?" And I go, "Bram Stoker's Francis Ford Coppola." He goes, "Yeah," and fist bump.
Yeah. Fist bump. Yeah, I love it.
It was funny. It was definitely a
That
trip.
was a good movie.
I
I had
loved
some
it.
sweatshirts done by an artist who airbrushed. I had two different ones done: old Dracula and the young Dracula with the top hat, and you know the older Dracula with the red and all the buns in his hair. And just because I really thought it was so well done, never wore them, but I just thought, oh my gosh, it would be such like they didn't have a lot of merchandise back then. Like certainly nothing that you could wear.
Yeah,
And you know, now I look at these two things going, what am I supposed to do with these?
I
You know,
love that one.
seemed like a good idea at the time, but they're beautifully
Yeah.
done.
I love that movie, and Francis Ford Coppola. He did Godfather too, right? And
You did.
yeah,
Yep.
That's what I figured. But I loved it, and of course, I love Nosferatu the Silent, and I love the Bela Lugosi one. But that Francis
Yeah.
Ford Coppola, I actually have merchandise of that. There's some figures I just got not too long ago that from Todd McFarlane, the guy that does Spawn. He put a figure out of the werewolf, the weird, rape werewolf that's in the movie, and then the bat thing, and they're rare. Like
That
they're
thing was
hard to
bloody
find.
awesome. Yeah,
There's
it was
some
well
neat stuff.
done. The
Yeah.
graphics were really well done in that movie.
And what was
So
so good is they immersed it into Vlad the Impaler, like the historical, and they did a good job of immersing both of them together.
they
So,
did.
so
So
that's
what do
what
you
I
think of
was.
Dracula Untold with Luke
You
Evans?
know,
I really enjoyed that actually. It was a whole different twist on everything. Not
I
traditional.
I saw it. It was good, but I need to watch it again because I've seen other people talking about it online, saying how good it was. I didn't hate it, but it's like I need to watch it again. I don't remember everything, but I need to dig it up and watch it again because I've seen people compliment it a lot, actually.
Yeah, I thought it was really well done also, just because it's an entirely different approach. It's not at all, you know, for the most part, Bram Stoker is really, really well done. And I had mixed feelings, you know, because I'm sitting there with, I like Luke Evans, but I can't get him out of my head with The Hobbit. So I'm like, I don't really know how this is going to go. But I saw it and went, yeah, he really rocked it. He did a really good job.
I need to watch it again for sure. And
Hmm.
then, of course, there's one of those Nosferatu with Klaus Kinski that was by Werner Herzog. I don't know if you ever saw that, but that's a weird one, buddy. It's good though. It's like
I
70s color, but it's
okay.
great, but it's scary.
Is it?
It's a remake of Nosferatu, and it starts off with like weird mummified babies and weird stuff in some weird place. I don't know, but it's really
Let me tell you
strange.
a story about Nosferatu.
Okay.
A friend of mine wrote a book. Well, he's got a book series called it's the Vampire Tales, right? And one of them goes back to World War One. Do you know there was a story that he dug up and he incorporated it somehow into his that back during the war, there was a group of soldiers who needed to hunker down for the night, and they ended up in this old barn. And the farmer, the owner, said, "Whatever you do not go out at night, no matter what you hear. You lock yourselves in this barn and you stay in here for the night. There are things out there you just do not want to trifle with," sort of thing. So they heard like in the wee hours of the morning all the screaming and livestock, and they took a peek through the cracks in the wood, and they saw a being that was very much like Nosferatu, because the guy who wrote the story was one of those soldiers, apparently, or it was a family member of his who was one of those soldiers.
Nice. Who's the author again? So I can write this down. The author. I
Why
mean, who's this
I
guy?
don't. Why is it eluding me? Because I'm not a big fan of the show,
Is,
but the movie.
is it?
You have to.
Oh,
Oh, my friend. Oh, it's Wayne Mallows. He just wrote that into his story, with them being in the trenches, and of course his character is that person, that vampire that was seen in you know that story. And he says, no, it's because I found this story. And that's just how basically Nosferatu came to be. I was like,
Okay,
why have I never heard of
I
that?
found this book, Whitechapel Road, one of them. So I was
That's
just
right.
trying to
That's
get.
the first one. The second one is and again, and I know he's probably going to beat the. How can you not remember that? So there's a series. Yeah, there's a series. I think it's
It's
called
fine.
Unnatural
We
Selection.
found the first one.
Unnatural
I'm mostly
Selection, I
just here
believe, is the one you want.
so I can check them out
It's
sometime.
it's book 3. Unnatural Selection has that little tidbit in there. So, and then of
Some of
course the
my
best
first,
one is 4.
yeah, some of my first vampire books that I remember, Salem's Lot. And then when I was going through chemo and stuff, when I had testicular cancer at 17, I latched onto those Anne Rice books like they were life preserves, which was kind of maybe healthy in some ways and not in other ways. But when I
Yes.
was healed, when I was healed and went back to school, people called me a vampire. It was like I took on attributes or something. It got paler or something. I don't know what happened,
Oh, you'd love
but
this series then. It's all
I,
historical fiction. It's all
I will add it.
vampire character in actual events.
Cool. I'm adding it.
No,
I'm
it's
putting
really
it.
well done. It's won awards. The second one
Sending
won
it to
awards.
my email so I can check it out for sure.
Sure.
And we saw Interview with the Vampire recently. I liked it, but there's some kind of cheesy with Tom Cruise. Let's stop. But
Well,
it
I
wasn't
can't.
bad. It
I
was.
can't. I
You
can't.
can't do
I
Tom
can't.
Cruise. Well, that's
I
good.
can't. No, I can't do
Yeah,
that. I was just
it
like,
wasn't the
you know,
best movie in
it
the
wasn't
world.
my favorite. No,
Yeah.
I
no,
Well,
boycott Tom Cruise.
really.
Louis, 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 Louis.
No, I know. It's just, Queen of the Damned, however, was really good. You know, I
I
really like
saw
that.
it. It
Stuart
was kind of.
Townsend made a really good
They're both
Lestat.
kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah. Anne Rice is doing a new show of Vampire Chronicles, I think on Hulu with her son. So here's hoping that something good will come from it. That it'll be decent. You
hey,
never, yeah. Hope.
they're like the New Orleans people. We got to support our New Orleans people,
I tried
right?
to get her on before she wanted to do like 15 minutes. So it's like, what? That's like an info commercial. I didn't
I
do
know. Hey, at least you're
that.
able to get her. She
Yeah.
actually requested a couple of Wayne's books, first 2
Wow.
books.
Cool.
Yeah, he sent them to her. Yeah.
Nice. Very, very nice. I know they're doing a movie, The Demeter, which is about that ship. And I know, the ship in Dracula where they're all, Dracula's in it and
Yes,
all that.
yes, yes. I'm
And
like, why
they
is that ringing a
said
bell? I'm
they're
just
doing a
drawing blanks.
whole movie on that. And I saw that Viggo
Really?
Mortensen may be involved, but I don't know if that's
I will
changed.
watch freaking anything that Viggo Mortensen is in.
Yeah.
Just freaking saying.
I'm
All he has
hoping
to
that
do
they
is
still do
stand
it.
there and I'm okay. So
I'm hoping they still do it.
he's a good
Another
actor. He is.
a weird thing. I don't. Brad Pitt brought up some Dracula Vlad the Impaler historical movie that's just historical. I don't know if he's going to be in Vlad the Impaler. I don't know how I feel about that. But he bought it up. It's supposed to be like a Braveheart kind of situation. But I haven't heard anything else
Mm,
about it. But it was a buzz. There was a little buzz years ago, and it just kind of like. Shoo. So
it
who knows?
fizzled.
Yeah, it happens.
I don't mind him too much. I wish somebody would come out and do Vlad's story. I
Historical.
think Dracula Untold was a little bit of that and a little bit of, it touched on it probably more than anything. And there's a lot of misconceptions, about Vlad. And, he was an interesting character. In fact, I bought a book. I tried to find it. I've relocated, in the last year and things are still in storage. I can't find everything. But there was a book I'd actually purchased while I was in Tergoviste, Romania. And it was basically done with accounts from people that were in his circle at the time, like documentation, like soldiers and things like that. And they
Wow.
put this book together. I haven't even read it yet. It was just sort of, like, I'm one of those people that just travels with a backpack and then I'll buy suitcases when I'm there and just fill it with stuff while I'm visiting and then just send it home. So, it just came back with some stuff. People don't realize how inexpensive it is to go to Romania. It's very, very inexpensive. You could live there like royalty for like next to nothing. Your most
Wow.
expensive thing would be the flight. You can get a hotel room, a beautiful hotel room for $20 a night.
I'd like to go one year for sure, but I've never
Or
been on
just sleep in the haunted
I've never
forest.
been on a plane, so it'll be a big thing for me.
Oh,
Maybe one year.
it was always a bucket list thing for me and just worked out. And I went and spent, close to 3 weeks out there.
was it because of a Vlad the Impaler fetish, or was it something you just want to go? I mean, was that part of it?
Fetish.
That's me. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I like it. I like it. I think bits and pieces. I'm a history, especially ancient history fanatic, and Vlad the Impaler, like Vlad himself, was always an intriguing story to me because I remember seeing the old show In Search Of, like the original with Leonard Nimoy,
Yes.
and they
Great
filmed it
show.
right. That was so well done, and they filmed it at Bran Castle, and I thought, oh, what a really interesting story. But I mean, most people don't realize, like, they don't even think Vlad even ever spent a night there. May have like gone through. It was a border castle. It's beautiful, it really is. But that's like where the intrigue started for me, and I thought, I really wanted to know more, and I just became like from very early on. I think I was like maybe 13, 14 when I watched that and went, wow, it's really an interesting story. And ancient history is always something I excelled at. So, my son came home from school one day and goes, I have to do a special report for history on, a historical figure. I'm like, oh, who are you going to do? He goes, well, it's for mega points. I thought you would do Vlad. I will do your homework is what essentially you're saying. I'm like, okay, challenge accepted. It's like A plus. Yeah. So, whatever. Bonus points. It took me like 2 hours. So, but it's fascinating stuff.
It's interesting how I mean, I could see how he's a hero, but sometimes when you read all the grotesque stuff, you're like, they still think this guy's a hero. It's like I've read things they're waiting for him to come back and holding his artifacts. That's probably like folklore stuff or something. But it's
It
interesting at the
is.
parallels, and I understand why he's viewed as that. He was like a Christian warrior that was, keeping back the invasion, and a lot of the grotesque like murder stories. I know some of them, of course, happened, but they also kind of like over glorified it with the news back then or something too for other reasons
The
too. I've heard.
Germans did. Yeah, they basically really they made up a lot of stuff, and that's what you would hear. People don't realize he, as a young child with his brother, was sent to live with the Sultan in Turkey, and it was like, oh, Vlad the Impaler. Can I tell you how like everybody in Europe at that time was impaling people? He learned that skill from the Turkish army. This is something that was quite normal back in the day. But he was a military person. He was a genius military person, and he had a very small. I mean, Wallachia at the time was very very small. And you have like 100,000, let's say, or 50,000 soldiers coming in to take over your country. You have no choice but to be very very creative, to which he was. And but I mean the people, yeah, he ruled with an iron fist, but there was practically no crime rate in in Romania, Transylvania at all. Nobody wanted to end up on the stick. It's like,
Yeah, definitely. I've heard the story of the golden cup, and like he'd
yeah,
hand a
it's
golden
a true
cup
story.
out, and no one would take it.
No,
He was feared and loved. I've heard weirder stuff about. I know this is probably folklore, but I've talked about this with Don Webb and Stephen Flowers and some other people. Scholomance, that weird, like some story that got intertwined in Vlad somehow called Scholomance or Scholomance. It's Scholance, some kind of dark art school. That's a weird story. If you're not familiar, look it up. But
I'm not.
I
Yeah,
don't. I'm not exactly sure how it got interjected into it, but something about meeting the devil in this school and five will enter, four will leave, or something. It's weird, but it's interesting. Look it up. I don't know a lot about it, but I try to poke people and find out stuff. But I don't know if it's probably folklore, is what I'm thinking, some kind of weird folklore stuff. But I know
right.
in Bram Stoker's Dracula, he's conflicted. Like obviously, he was a warrior for Christ because the Order of the Dragon was a group of warriors that battled for Christ. And then, of course, in the fictional story is where they interject where he seems corrupted by the devil or whatever, thus turning into a werewolf and all that. But the historical figure, he probably wasn't like that, right? I mean, was he always like the Order of Christ? What do we know about that, like
Well,
background
that's
wise?
okay. Well, try to look at it this way, because he was, Orthodox for sure. He was very a follower of the church, but the Order of the Dragon Okay, there's a lot of theories with that. They believe that he was just an Orthodox Templar. There were many, many Muslims that were Templars. And there's also, I mean, if you look at what the Templars were, they were allegedly the guardians of the royal bloodline of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. So the Order of the Dragon, like there's a belief that there's this thing called the Dragon line, which is that line, the Merovingian line. So the Order of the Dragon, like people say, well, yeah, dragon is just, like Dracul. It's all like son of the dragon. It's this thing. And it could very well be. But there are those who believe that it actually runs a lot deeper and that they were, Templars who basically were the guardians of the dragon line. Same line, Grail line. So again, theory, fun nonetheless.
Was it always just son of like dragon? Where did it get interjected with devil? Is that part of the fantasy?
Devil dragon. It's I think was one in the same, culturally speaking. But he was very revered. He was a hero because, he kept, the Turks at bay, like very strategic for a long, long time. Even he managed even to make alliances and to keep the Turkish army out of Romania. Because had he not, I mean, chances are the entire country would have been enslaved. Many, many people would have. And, you had people working against him in there. You had the boyars who were like the I guess, upper crust, out of Transylvania, Desrochers, which is the birthplace of Dracula. And they all sort of like wall themselves up in there. This is like a walled city. It's untouched. It's just really completely inhabitable, or people live there. You're not really allowed a whole lot of vehicles or anything in there. It's all cobblestone. They're not allowed to change, very much in there at all. Yeah. And it's practically untouched since even before his birth. So this is where these elite people would do their business out of, and they murdered his brother and his father. So I don't personally blame him for taking revenge and inviting them all to dinner and then burning them alive in a room. I've probably done the same thing,
He went William Wallace on them.
He did. I would have done the same damn thing, So
kind of the times. Well, the times.
It was the times. It was harsh.
I got a question about the Turkish thing, though. When he was sent to Turkey, was that like kind of forethought to like learn their tactics so that down the road when they knew the Turks would invade, he'd be able to defend against them? Or was that more punishment?
He was 5 years old. He and his brother. Or he was 8. I believe Radu was 5. So this was a treaty by his father as a sign of good faith with the Turkish Sultan. Those boys were abused. They were badly abused. You have a lot of mixed things with that, where they say, oh no, they would have lived in the royal house and treated because they were still royalty. They were not. Yeah. They were taught to be Turks essentially, but where Radu embraced it, Vlad did not. Vlad was very, very bitter, and he did learn a lot of tactics from them and used it against them in the end. But I think it was always, assumed that he would eventually take the throne, and the Turkish Sultan put him on the throne.
Okay. I'd heard some of that, but I wasn't sure what the reason was that they were sent.
It was just forced on them. They were just basically, the Turks wanted to incorporate them. They wanted them to embrace that lifestyle, because if they were going to be figureheads, let's say, like, first of all, it kept their father at bay, but by embracing the lifestyle, which Radu did, and in the end, Radu ended up on the throne for a little while with the demise of Vlad. So they want you to be pretty much Turkish, so you are going to rule and have complete loyalty to the Sultan. Right? It's like amalgamation. Church amalgamates everybody and incorporates them into it, and you learn their ways. Everybody's happy, and
So the Sultan's expected to just kind of like just walk in there and boom, he owns the place. Instead, he gets resistance from Vlad.
Well, pretty much. I mean, he had to make a peace treaty with, I mean, his father had to make a peace treaty. They were a small country and they were being invaded. The Turks were on the heels of invading them. So what happens at that point is that was tradition. When they would invade a country, it would be like, no, you send us members of your family, because what it does is it keeps that kingdom from attacking you, because they have your children. Yeah, for sure. But again, it was just brutal on those boys.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to be in that situation at all.
No, it was not kind.
Like a ransom. And
it was exactly that.
Yeah.
It was exactly that.
Assaulted, probably sexually, or who knows.
Everything.
Stuff. Yeah.
Everything.
I remember something where Vlad was in prison. He was impaling birds like Norman Bates and stuff.
He'd impale everything.
Was that true, though? He was actually doing animals in prison.
Anything. Yeah. It's just like, well, I mean, think about it. Depending on where he was in prison at that time, if you're talking Hyundora is beautiful castle. That's the one that you see with the drawbridge that goes out. Very haunted. He was there for I thought they said something like 10 years, 11 years. And there were different, some people say, oh no, I think eventually he got to live, he settled down. He got to live within the walls of the castle because he was still, he was still a royal, but for the first few years, I mean, it was under the floor of the Grand Hall, like in a pit. It's just like time, and it was primitive times. There's nothing in there, like even the one that their family castle was Tergovistae, and not too far from Snagov Monastery, and it was, there was a dungeon right there too that he was said to at some point had to spend time in, and it was just like, Jesus, this is dire. They're like pits. That's pretty much what they are.
No AC, no internet.
Nothing.
No cell phone.
Just
nothing.
Madness. Just madness. So I can see where someone would plot revenge for the rest of their life.
I know.
I know.
Taking my Nintendo away.
If you think of that book that you're talking about with the historical accounts, let me know. I know I have that Prince of Many Faces by, I forget who it is by, but I have it, and that's a pretty popular one. It's called Prince of Many Faces, and I know it's like a historical thing, but if you come across that one, let me know for sure. I wouldn't mind looking it up if it's exists out there somewhere, but I've always loved it. I don't know, I've been attracted to the story and everything. I saw in this one vampire book, this was something kind of interesting, and I don't know if this is folklore or true or not, but they said something about a comet came through. And I'd also remember some story with Arthur, which I know there's a lot of debate on that story altogether.
There is, I know.
Something about a comet coming through before the reign of Vlad, and he saw it. And it seemed like it was pretty sure of itself. Some book on vampires, but maybe it was BS. I don't know. But it was interesting to think about the comet and everything. I've had Graham Phillips on about Arthur, and that gets so complicated. And I'm like, oh, I'll just watch Excalibur. I can't do
I know.
so much. But,
do you have an ebook?
The Arthur stuff gets crazy technical for sure. Just all kinds of weird stuff. But I'm interested as the culture there and Transylvania and everything. Do they talk about him all the time? And obviously they're like statues. I mean, what is it like? Do they mention him? Like, you hear people talking about him everywhere? I mean, how is that?
Everywhere. First of all, it's very touristy. So you go to many locations where he had spent time, and it's fascinating. I mean, even places you haven't. Like, Bran is probably one of the more really touristy places because the castle has pretty much been immortalized in movies and TV series, and when the original royal family lost that castle during the revolution in the 1980s, and it was finally given back to them probably within the last 5 to 10 years, and they decided, I mean, the owners is like, and I say that with all due respect, but he's quite elderly, an accountant, in New York. And the family decided that they would keep the castle, and they built a village. They decided we're going to make this into something so people can come in and visit the castle. And people don't realize with Romania, it's a huge wine country. They make wine everywhere there. And they have, ski hills and resorts all over the place. It's amazing because you have the Carpathian Mountains, which are some of the most breathtaking mountains. I love mountains. I go brain dead in the mountains. I love it. And the country is surrounded pretty much by these Alps, and you can't help but just imagine what it must have been like back then. No roads, nothing, because the country in many parts of it is very untouched. It's very primitive. You still see horses and carts. I mean, wood wheels carts, like big solid wood wheels. It's amazing, really untouched. But they built this village with a bit of an amusement thing going on. There's restaurants at the base of the castle. I had my red Dracula beer. Yeah, I did. It's like, woohoo. I sent you the picture of the vampire campgrounds. I thought as soon as you come in, I'm like, wow, look at this, freaking amazing. So that's the first picture I took in Brad. And I ended up staying in a little villa there. The girls and I, friends of mine and team members. And people there now will build buildings on their properties because so many people come, and they don't all want to stay in hotels, even though there's I think it's like a Hotel Dracula or something now in Brand that you can stay at. And it's very touristy because everywhere you go, there's little plastic statues and plates and necklaces and T-shirts galore of Vlad Dracula. It's not the vampire Dracula, it's Vlad Dracula, just like this. And it's everywhere. And gnomes, for whatever freaking reason, the Romanians love freaking gnomes. I am not partial to gnomes. So this became a very big joke because everywhere I went, there was a freaking gnome. They probably had more gnomes than they did Dracula. I'm like, I don't know what the gnome story is, but I don't like it.
Like a gnome, kind of like Dungeons and Dragons gnome, like the little shoemaker guy, or
not cool gnomes. No, little red hats and little freaking floppy zippers
like the
and
little ones you've put in your
white
yard.
beards, and I don't know what it is with gnomes. I'm just not a fan of them. So they were everywhere you went. Besides that, so I'm like, nature is just a cruel joke right now for me. But anyway, there are statues everywhere you go, Turco Viste had one. They had one at Rigisora. They have his place of birth, which is now some restaurant with, it's got like the coffin in the back. And, some people might say, oh, it's really cheesy. Other people might say, wow, this is very creative. You go to Snagov Monastery, which was the first place I went to. So in fact, there's this big, crazy male turkey that just follows you around everywhere. It's like biggest freaking turkey I've ever seen in my life. It's like a behemoth. Anyhow, kind of just like follows you around. But going into I learned a lot while I was there because Snagov Monastery is, you see it, you're aware of what it is. He's supposedly buried there. He's not buried there. No, he's not buried there. They have, there's like a crypt in the floor. The story says that, back in the 50s, that somebody opened it and they found a headless body in there. It had somehow gone missing. And if you listen to the story, the Turks would not behead you when they allegedly it's like, oh, they killed him. They took his head, took it to the Sultan as proof. The Turks did on average behead you. What they would do is take the skin from here off. So, it's kind of funky with that story. But there's allegedly 2 other burial places. There is another one in Romania, which was near the battlefield, to where they believe he fell. And that story says, there's stories that says he met his brother on the battlefield and his brother killed him. There were others who said that he was lured to the monastery and he was killed there. And they removed his finger, because that's the ring, right? A power, the royal ring. They would have taken that, or the hand. I believe it was a whole hand. There's other stories that, his daughter went to fight, went to the Sultan upon his death, and asked them to release the body to her, and that he's buried somewhere in Turkey because of where she was. So there's just a lot of stories. Nobody really knows for sure where he is. But what I did find out when I was on the island is that behind the monastery, there used to be a prison. And it was like just terrible conditions. Like they would just almost work to death. So and you can see the foundation of where that prison was. It's just, and yet here it is with, this monastery, and it's very self-sufficient. There's a woman there who looks after the monks. She does all the gardening and the laundry. They don't come out at all. I'm thinking I would love to just, meet one of these monks. No, they do not come out at all from their residence. So it's really funky, but they're Orthodox. So they're really, really hardcore. But time stands still there as well. You can walk anywhere you want on that island. For very, very small feet.
What about folklore and stuff? Does stuff come up about, like, let's say, cryptids or anything there out of the ordinary or anything like that?
Yes. So if you go to the town of Brasov, which is primarily, got a very German feel to it because in the war, many Germans settled there. And the idea with Brasov is that I think it's on every full moon, wolves, like werewolves, come down from the mountain into the court. It's like I say, it's a city. There's one section of it that's very, very old, and they apparently come right down. This is where the black church is also, and they congregate, and people avoid going into that courtyard on the night of the full moon because werewolves come down and run rampant around that area of the town. Yeah. There's gypsies everywhere. Yeah, everywhere. Everywhere.
I may have to go there one year. Hopefully,
oh, yeah. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, but it's very inexpensive. It's very inexpensive because they will use the euro, but they have what's called the RON or the lei. It's called two different things. Like from myself, and I mean, the euro is probably going to be close to what your dollar is. For us, we were pretty much just shy of being par at that time. And honestly, for $300, I got almost 1,000 Romanian RONs.
It's $1 US to 4 Romanian RONs.
Yeah. Okay. So there you go. Like,
if you quadruple your money if you cash in.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah. Pretty much. Like I said, you can live like a king.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I went to Spain in high school, 1983 or 4. And at the time I was working as a lifeguard, so I was making, like about $3,000 a summer. So I only cashed in $500, but I went over there with like 50 grand in money. I mean, I literally had $50,000 of Spanish money, and I came home with 300 of that dollar. So I only spent 200 there.
Crazy.
I bought a switchblade. I bought speakers for my Walkman, and then when I came home, I cashed it into American money, and I bought a leather jacket, which I still own. I don't fit in it, but I still have it.
No, it's true, but that's awesome. Like back in the day, you could, and I mean, this even wasn't all that long ago, but there are parts of the world where you can still really go pretty inexpensively. I remember at one time I was looking at a home in Romania, and I mean, even the real estate was ridiculously inexpensive. I was looking at a building it was something crazy, like, I mean, the 11 or 1200s. And it had a renovation. It was like I guess some kind of a big manor house of some sort. It wasn't a castle, but it wasn't far off of one. It was like, it had something like 10 or 12 bedrooms. And, the last renovation was at the early 1800s. I'm like, I don't know. It didn't have a furnace. It didn't have water anymore. You would have to dig a well, maybe do solar or something. I don't know. But it was like $100,000. I'm like, wow. But you'd have to have somebody living there all the time because otherwise the gypsies will squat. They take over completely, and the whole property is like after that. And it was only, I could see the mountain where the haunted forest was right from there.
Wow.
Yeah, it was right in that city. So I was just like, yeah, see, this could be a good thing.
Did they have like a vampire ball? Don't they do some kind of like thing like that or something? Is that where's that at?
That's held at Bran Castle. Now, of course, they've been talking about possibly doing it at the new Dracula Hotel, but they do have a masquerade ball on Halloween, And that is, it was at the castle for a very long time. And you have a meal and you dress up and, and now there is an old building that was at the base of the castle. It's been turned into like a tea room or small restaurant. And I mean, it's a fair size. It's not, when you see some of these places, it's not how it used to be. At one point where you look at now how you can go all the way up this big cobblestone road alongside the mountain and you come up into Bran. At one time, it was a different way in, like there weren't any roads, nothing. The same as if you go to Poyanade, which was what, the fortress where his wife jumped to her death. I mean, there's like 1,500 steps to get up there. Because I remember I was just feeling like total ass. And it's like, oh, I just had, some horrible mushrooms the night before, like it's like dinner mushrooms. Before anybody gets crazy ideas, what kind of mushrooms? Not those kind. You might have made the trip a little more interesting. Yeah, it wasn't that great of a party, no. But my stomach.
True.
I could have floated up there if I had those mushrooms, but that wasn't an option.
Not those kind of mushrooms and climb stairs. No,
No, not 1,500 of them. Honestly, my stomach was rebelling. I'm like, oh, I'm going to die on this freaking mountain. So we get there and it says there's 1,501 stairs to go up to the fortress. I'm going, oh, I'm going to just kill me, right? So I'm going up these stairs, 500 at a time. And at one point I'm standing there looking at my friend, Melissa. And I'm like, oh, says, damn. I says, now I know why she threw herself off. I said, I can't see anybody doing this. And there was this German couple, and I said it in a way where I must have been extremely disgruntled, and they understood English. Well, I turn around, they're laughing so freaking hard. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I really hope it was, you enjoyed your time up there. She goes, oh, it's great up there. I'm like, okay, good, because I have another 1,001 steps to go. So it was just unbelievable. And you get up there, and there's a guy who lives there in this little hut, and you have to pay him, and you go over this crickety old bridge. Well, it's metal, it's not too bad now, to get to the fortress. So you're looking down, it's like, okay, whatever. And he just looked like miserable, like he just, like, I'm like, shut up, I want your stupid job. Okay, I want to wake up every day in the Carpathian Mountains and look at that freaking fortress with this $1 million view. Here's your 10 freaking bucks, get back in the house and be quiet. He was just like, this is really foul. Because I don't imagine at that time there weren't a lot of people. By the time we got there, there was only the three of us up there. So, I'm like, whatever. But not a lot to see, but.
So the story of her jumping, I thought it was true, but it is for sure. I know it's in the movie Bram Stoker's, but they did it to trick her, right? They sent her a message saying he was dead, and then she got strong and jumped. Well, I bet he was pissed about that. And
you can go to the one where, part of the building where you look down and you can see there's the river, and that's where she jumped from. So, the place is really haunted. I mean, he would work people there until the clothes fell off their bodies, prisoners and such. And it's so high up. And when you look at the layout of it, you're just like, oh my God, I can't even imagine having to, like, he restored that fortress, from, like, it's been in his family for a long time, and he restored it, made it bigger. And when you look at how this thing sits, I mean, they must have been dangling off the edge in some cases. It's just really, really brutal. But, again, it's just a really interesting building. You could see everything from up there. It's a perfect place, strategically speaking.
So the table where he's sitting there, and it's kind of like a woodcut or something, and he's got a tear coming down his eye, and supposedly said he dipped his bread in their blood. I don't know how much of that's fact, but that picture has always found it really haunting, and I don't know if that was like a historical picture or something from the Germans or whatever, but it's still a neat, kind of a weird picture. You know the one I'm talking about, right? Where he's sitting at the table. He has a tear for some reason.
I have a collection of those pictures. There's actually, they were called wood prints or something like that. There's a collection. Perfect. Thank you. And it comes in like a case with all of these prints of these things. It's quite interesting. I bought one at auction, a few years ago. Well, probably many years ago now, but it's interesting to see them. And a lot of it was propaganda, anything to make him look. But I'll tell you, he had a much softer side than a lot of people would think. And I can't tell you in my field how many people are like, oh, we're just going to use the ghost box, have a seance and contact via the impaler. So I'm just like, okay, I was no different. Like, screw that, I want in. So, I want a piece of this. And I was quite successful with it just before going away, and only because he had come up in a reading of mine, which was very, very strange. And I'm like, okay, that's bizarre. So anyway, he came through at one point in a reading with another friend of mine who used, this ghost box. He's very, very well known. And he kept coming up, and you hear him speaking through this box. I got all the transcripts for it. And he said, oh, goes, you're here for whatever reason. And at first he was speaking in Romanian. I'm like, yeah, I totally don't speak Romanian, but thank you. And I started asking questions. I was like, okay, I'm just going to throw it out there since, whatever. He was able to bring him through as a medium and blah, blah, blah. And he said, I asked questions based on his death. And he validated the story of his hand being removed, because he called it, the ring of the kingdom, basically. And I was just sort of like, okay, well, that's it. That's interesting. And I made mention that I was going to Romania. And he says, home? And I went, yeah. And I said, I'm going to go to Hundora. And he goes, all he said was, we'll dance. And I went, okay. Whatever. Like, I half go with things. As a researcher, I just half go with things. I need lots of validation to go with anything. But I'm like, I'm just going to go with this because I really didn't know what to expect, anything like that. So anyway, a lot of stuff got said. I am at the haunted forest of all places. And the next day, I was going to Hundora. Now, Hundora, he spent 10 years, 11 years. But it's also where he ended up, I believe, with his second wife there, the king's sister or something crazy like that. I don't quite remember the whole story as to where that happened. But we had a ghost box there because we were there to hang out in the haunted forest. I'm like, no, I want to see if, everything they say about this place is I wanted to see if it's what it is. And all of a sudden, this really old-fashioned music came forward through the box. Now you have to remember, is on top of this mountain, you're pretty desolate. I mean, we couldn't even get a cell phone signal. So there's like nothing. When you're using these things, it's based on AM radio frequencies, and you're supposed to be able to bring in all this stuff. There was nothing. It was completely silent. All of a sudden, this old music started coming through, and there was a spirit individual who had been communicating with us in Romanian, and we asked, "Can you please speak in English?" Because I don't understand. Now, one of my teammates and friends, she was from Romania, so she was able to translate. But then they started saying, yeah, like da, which is yes in Romanian, and they would say yes. And someone comes through and says, what was it? Vlad the Killer or something. It wasn't Impaler, Vlad the Killer, something like that. And I was just like, oh, okay, whatever. Then this old-fashioned music came through, and he said, dance. I was like, well, shit. Well, shit. Okay, whatever. So it's just weird. A lot of weird. That night was probably one of the strangest experiences I ever had, with tons of stuff happened in that forest. But we can get to that later if you'd like. But what I found interesting is here at this house, a lot of people message me all the time, and some of them are mediums, and they'll say, I don't know why I get such a strong sense of Dracula at your house. And I'm laughing. I said, oh, it's got to be because of Wayne, because he writes vampire novels. She's like, no, this would be like the real person, not like a vampire. And I'm like, oh, I got nothing. Absolutely. I'm not making any connections at all. Until one day they were renovating at the back of the house and captured a photo of that.
Wow.
At your house.
Oh, yeah. It was
At
great.
your house. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool.
Absolutely. So, I train everybody in my surroundings. Like, now you get a picture of something, you freaking better recreate it. Like, you better. I want to make sure there's nothing. He goes, honestly, I took the picture 3 freaking times. I didn't even move. I just saw it. It didn't even move. Just bam, bam, bam. And the other 2 pictures was nothing. Just like, okay, that's interesting. So it's my screensaver most of the time. I've got this,
yeah,
and
I
then
want to see it. I want
I've
to
got
see it.
that other one.
Send it sometime. I want to see it. I have some
Absolutely.
kind
I
of
just didn't want to put
connection.
it on air. Yeah.
I've had some kind of connection, and someone said something about past life stuff with me, but I don't believe that. I don't think she was correct on that. But there is some kind of connection. It may be Earth energies because I'm a Capricorn. There may be a dragon serpentine thing there. There's weird stuff, but I've had weird stuff happen for sure with him, and definitely there are a lot of people with these balls and stuff dressed up like him everywhere, like Napoleon, or they like
Everybody
dress
dresses like Vlad.
I bet
Everybody
that's
dresses like
weird.
vampires or like Vlad. It's just very crazy. So it's a touristy thing. Vlad Dracul sells. The name
Still
sells, the
bringing
image
profit
sells,
and prosperity, even in his death. So that's a
even in
good
his
thing.
death.
Still, yeah.
But he's caring. He's like almost as though he's still caring for the people, in a sense, because everybody cashes in on it one way or another. You can buy. I've got probably 6 different type bottles. I should have had them ready. Bottles of Dracula wine. You see the one vampire wine that you can get. I've got that, and all my wine I brought back from Romania, and they're all different labels. And now they have Dracula beer with different labels. They have all kinds of stuff. It's crazy, So it is a really big market over there. It's very commercialized, yet pretty much anywhere that you go in the country, time stood still, and it's an anomaly, really is. It's
Do they think he's
fantastic.
gonna return? Like, is there? I know I've seen folklore stuff about stuff like that, but does that ever get mentioned? Like somehow they hope he comes back.
Yeah, they all have their belief system that he will return and he will, free the country. But a lot of that happened, I think, during the revolution. Now, the dictator at the time, he was full blown Vlad Dracula, like obsessed, apparently. And he was just very barbaric, and the people took him out. I mean, literally took him out, So that changed after that, and a lot of the castles and such were returned to the families, and the real estate was returned to the families. And it's fascinating. I find that the folklore, the culture, it's more interesting than a lot of even the propaganda. He just was a brilliant man. He was just a strategist, a military strategist. He knew how to instill fear, but it was instilled into him. It was instilled into him, and the father he respected, was killed by people of his own country, whereas his youngest son was just hated him. It's like he gave us to these people, and he embraced the whole Turkish lifestyle.
I know there's some story where I know he likes everybody together, but there's something about I don't know.
Sorry, I can't hear you, darling.
Oh, I was just hold on. Let me see. Let me make sure. Can you hear me now?
I can't. Feel like I'm in a Verizon commercial, but I'm all right.
I don't know exactly. Hopefully, my internet that's not messing up.
No, you're good. That's much better.
Okay. But I know the story where he invites all the people to his dignitaries or whatever, and then he kills them all. But there's also some weird story about him inviting people that are, got problems or, or handicaps or something. I don't think that's true. Is it? He just invited the dignitaries, right?
Yeah. I've never heard the story about handicapped people. With the dignitaries, you have to understand there were many different situations. There were the ones where the boyars who were murderers of his father and brother, kind of thinking those might have been the one that got burned alive, who were being brought in for a big dinner. Then you have those who came in where they nailed their turbans and such onto their heads because it was customary that they just didn't remove them. And Vlad was like, wow, goes, I'm the king, I'm the prince. You remove them in my presence. And they didn't. Okay, then, well, I'll make sure they never come off again. So,
Yeah.
but, and he was said to, bring people in and ask questions. He was very calculative in the questions that he asked. So he might ask them something like, what do you think of me, really? The question, what do you think of me? Something that simple. You have these priests. There were 3 priests, from what I remember in the story. And one just like, oh, you're like, whatever. Like, I think he would have been like, you're a murderer, this and that. 2 out of the 3 were killed. And the third one, he was just basically very honest. He goes, what do you think? And he goes, I don't think. You're a very nice person. You're a murderer, blah, blah, blah. He goes, good. Your honesty saved your life. Now, because the other guy's like, oh, no, you're all this, you're all that. And he knew they were lying. So he sent them off, and he goes, you go back and you tell everybody now that I spared your life because of your honesty.
Cool. There is a burning of the sick and poor story, but that's probably part of the propaganda or something. So I don't need to get into it, but there is like some weird thing I've seen it.
There's so many out there, really. But there was a lot of propaganda. Did he really dine at the foot of all these impaled people, dipping his bread in the blood? Propaganda, allegedly. But it's everywhere. They tried to demonize this man.
Yeah. Did the church betray him or something, like Rome or something?
The church.
Again, they did.
Yes. Who haven't they?
I know they were going to send reinforcements or something, and they didn't for some reason or something.
Well, yeah, partially. I mean, he was, working. He relied on his cousin, to help with reinforcements. He relied on a lot of people to help him, and nobody ever came. The church never showed up, But again, it's just, I think he felt betrayed all the way along. It's not so much like, his wife committed suicide. They wouldn't bury her. Like, they wouldn't put her in a holy place to be buried. That allegedly is a story that, but that was customary. If you didn't have the right to take your own life, if you did, despite the reasons, it didn't matter. You just didn't have the right to take your own life. Only God had that right. Therefore, you couldn't be buried in a consecrated, holy place.
Jay, anything you want to add?
I've got quite a few things, actually. The first thing I wanted to get to is, so since you were there doing research, and I don't know what you were actually trying to find out, or what you were going historical, or trying to find out what, where the stories actually came from, but all vampires that you see in almost all the movies have some sort of powers. And I think most of the powers come from Hollywood. I mean, he's got flight, gaseous form, immortality to a degree. You get stabbed in the heart with wood, you die. They can summon bats, rats, and wolves. They can turn into a bat or a wolf. They have the hypnotic gaze and hypnotic suggestion on people, and then usually they're very pretty. Originally, the vampires in the original stories were gray-skinned or dark-skinned and bloated and like move slow like a zombie, and so they have all these weird powers and weaknesses to silver, wood stakes, and holy water. So what actual powers did someone with vampirism have? Did they have any powers at all, or that's just all Hollywood and hype and story?
I'm pretty much thinking it's a lot of Hollywood stuff in there. Yeah, when you're looking back into like Sitigoy, there's a lot of different names depending on where you go. They suspected you were a vampire. They would bury you. They would put like a big rock in your mouth, so you couldn't bite down. They would cut your head off. Like, don't get me wrong, the superstition behind it is very real.
Mm-hmm.
It's very real. Like, there's some towns out there and throughout Poland, and these bodies have been found in those conditions like everywhere. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they would just take the head off and you'd find it down by the feet. Like, they basically made a point of making sure that you were not rising from the dead under any circumstances. So the fear is, I think, the superstition is very real, but I don't really, for myself, I've always been more interested in the real story, like the not the so much the fictional character, even though I'm a big fan of the story, I didn't see a lot of that sort of thing out there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like they even the whole commercialized everything. It's Vlad Dracul.
Yeah.
There's very little on the vampire, unless they'll have you can buy vampire T-shirts and stuff,
Right.
obviously in Dracula, but you know, but I think media has definitely done its job in instilling, you know, that belief system, because there are some people, like when you go there, you know, they shut down at a certain time of the night, and you just don't go out and do anything. It's done. That's it. Things are very quiet. 10 o'clock, you're like,
Yeah, there are things out there that are going to get you after a certain hour, and it's nice you mentioned the beheadings. So some of the ritual in actually killing vampires was after you stake the heart, you'd behead it, and then you said a rock, but most other lore is you take holy wafers, like communion bread or something, mm-hmm. Some kind of not desecrated, but some sort of anointed bread from a priest. Put it in the mouth, and you put the head between the legs or between the feet. Yeah. And I think they also at some point they either pin the arms to it or take the arms off the body and bury them somewhere else completely. Mm-hmm. So there's something that scared those people into making them kill these bodies in those ways. Mm-hmm. And so we got legends of vampires in almost all cultures. I don't think it'd probably be easier to list the cultures that don't have vampire stories versus the ones that do. Mm-hmm. But, so what inspired the story? I mean, is it like an actual creature that they saw? We're talking ancient aliens actually proposed that they were this group of space aliens that came to Earth. Or are they just tales to frighten children, like the boogeyman? You know, don't go over there; the vampires will get you. You know, where do we get these ideas from? I mean, it's a strange thing to have a human with teeth that drinks your blood. It just really is very strange.
Okay, let's theorize. I'm going to go to the haunted forest for a quick moment. It's said to have a huge portal. And when I was there, there's a lot of sightings of UFOs up there. It's apparently under no-fly zone, which we didn't realize. It is considered to be Romania's Bermuda Triangle. There are stories of disappearances. One in specific that stays fresh in my mind is a little 5-year-old girl. She disappeared. She was 5 years old. She was gone for 5 years. She was returned, still 5 years old, and just not right. Like her mind was gone, right? Never, ever the same. You know, there was a shepherd who disappeared with his entire flock. You know, wow. There's 2 circles up on that mountain. A lot of people tend to mix the 2 up. You know, but there's a lot of stuff that goes on. The locals catch UFOs over the top all the time. I can tell you the experiences that I had. Like when I first walked into this place, all the trees are messed up and just like crooked, and there's no animals right off the bat. You don't see anything. If they're there, they're so far away from those circles, it's not even funny. And birds, no birds. Didn't hear any birds and see any birds and see any little animals. Saw insects. And the strangest thing is nothing aside from weeds or grass. No flowers or anything grows in the circle. And I kept hearing this droning sound, and it sounded like it's a humming, and you hear it throughout the whole forest. After a while, you become so conditioned to it that you don't even really notice it. But boy, do you notice it when you first come in. Allegedly, there's supposed to be a portal to another world there that people have come through. So before I get into like I said, a lot happened in this forest. The name Hoiabaciu means the shepherd's forest, and it was a shepherd who disappeared. Just to give you some background on it. So anyway, let's say there's a portal. Why is it under no-fly zone? There's an airport not that far from it, but you know, I was there, watched. I had a nap, you know, in the forest. I was like in the circle, just had a little sleep. But I do that too. I just want to hear what's going around. I feel, as a medium, I want to feel what's going on there. And all of a sudden I open my eyes, I sit up, and I see this guy in a cart just driving by. Is that a portal thing? Like he's in an old cart. He's looking at me, very peculiar. I'm looking at him, and he's not even dressed anything. Like he looked like he was just, but then again, half of Romania is like that. But how the hell did he get up on top of the mountain in a cart? So anyway, let that be. I'm like, oh, maybe there's something nearby. Then he just disappeared. And I looked down the trail because there's 6 ways into the circle. That's it. He's gone, like gone. So there is folklore that states that vampires and wolves and a lot of these cryptids that we hear about are indeed not from this planet. They just come through these portals. So when people, it all starts with a story. It only takes one story in a village. And if you have all these villages having stories, it gets passed down. It's oral history. Then they immigrate to this side of the world, and those stories continue, and that interest continues. I mean, you look at New Orleans itself had its own vampire, the Count Saint Germain. This guy had been going on through Europe and Paris back in the 1500s, 1700s. And, when the camera came to be, they were photographing this guy. And he surfaces in New Orleans. And he would right into the 80s, people were talking to this guy who looked the freaking same. And then he just disappears and ends up and relocates. But there have been sightings. Joe will tell you there's all kinds of sightings where people claim to see vampires in the old part of New Orleans. So what is that? Are we looking at beings who really are interdimensional, let's say? Not even, let's say, extraterrestrial. Let's go interdimensional. An interdimensional being that just, is it a bleed through, or do they just traverse back and forth through portals? We don't know, really. There's no way of knowing because we're not the only grain of sand on the beach. It's a pretty big beach.
They could even be just slightly out of phase, and they can phase in and out of our time. They're still on our dimension, but just
who knows?
Half a second out of phase.
Sure,
and
who knows?
You mentioned the New Orleans vampire. I went to school in Savannah, which I call New Orleans light. New Orleans has the Mardi Gras. Savannah has the St. Patrick's Day party.
Right.
And it's a very similar feel. We get all these idiots from out of town, millions of people come into town for the 2 or 3 day weekend. And then you can carry a beer from one bar to the next, as long as it's not in a breakable container like glass.
Sure.
And so we had our own vampire. There was a guy who, in the daytime, he worked at the 7-Eleven. You could go up there
That's awesome.
5 o'clock in the afternoon and buy a package of cigarettes from him. And then at 8 o'clock at night, he's out downtown Savannah, black tuxedo, tails, red sash, medallion, the whole fake teeth, the whole works. He did this for years and years till he passed away. Weird similarity there. But it was awesome that you went about going to the portal side, and maybe it's interdimensional, maybe it's inner. Whatever you just said, I've lost my train of thought there.
Interdimensional.
And there was another one, but the point is moot on that. There's a story that I came across, and I hope you're familiar with it. It's actually a UFO story about a top secret Apollo mission, Apollo 20, that allegedly happened in the late 70s, where they sent 3 astronauts, 2 Americans and 1 Russian, to the far side of the moon to investigate a derelict spacecraft where they found a dead alien species, a female and a male. And I don't remember if the male was decapitated by the crew and his head brought back to Earth, or he was decapitated in the crash of the spacecraft. But allegedly they brought these Asian-looking bodies back to Earth. The female allegedly came back to life, or they were somehow able to reanimate her either in Florida or Area 51. And I don't know if she's still alive.
Florida.
Huh?
Florida.
Yeah, I don't remember where they brought the body back to, but I think Florida was one of the alleged places. But I lose the story after they bring the alien back to Earth. And then there's a tie into a movie called Life Force, which is 1985 with Steve Railsback, Patrick Stewart's in there.
I remember. Yeah.
Frank Finley from the Three Musketeers in there. Toby Hooper. And it's almost the exact same story, where they send these astronauts to find a derelict spaceship that's flying through space through our solar system. They don't hear from them, and then the spaceship comes to Earth. The alien space creatures are like space vampires. They come to London and destroy the place. So I was wondering if you had heard any of those 2 stories. I mean, yeah, the Life Force story is fictional, but I believe that it is based on and or inspired by the Apollo 20 top secret story.
I heard a snippet of it a few years ago, but it never went beyond a snippet, only because somebody had mentioned it on a show that I was doing for somebody else. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. But I never really delved much into it. It's just, you hear so much. It's hard to follow it all. I know that, we've got upcoming episode, The Gray Zone. We will at one point cover vampires. And I've got, like, if I would know you guys really want to talk about vampires, oh my God, I got so much freaking stuff on that. It's unreal, but it's a whole other, like, it really does veer away from the whole topic of, of Vlad. I think Vlad just sort of, got brought into the Bram Stoker story, and it's amazing how detailed everything went, considering Bram Stoker never ever stepped foot in Romania.
Yeah,
and he had the landscaping, the castles, like everything.
He did most of his research in France, didn't he? For the
well, he was in England, and he spent his summers in Scotland.
Okay.
So I don't know much. You'd have to almost, talk to Dacre, but I could probably hook you up. So,
I mean, it seems like he imposed upon Vlad Tepes things that aren't actual fact or history, but some of the things that Vlad has kind of made their way into the vampire lore, like on his hat, he's got that medallion. Almost every movie depiction of vampire, he's got like a red sash and like it's almost like a war medal, like a medal of honor, or some kind of medal of distinguishment. Yeah, the Order of the Dragon. Yeah. So I mean, what is that he's got on his head? Where does that come from? That particular icon, because that's very like vampire all the way through.
Well, I think it's maybe because they adopted that from him. I mean, it's most of the vampires that you read about, all these old rich guys that have been around forever, and they got houses everywhere, and I mean, a lot of them are not like that, So I think they just sort of copied all that, or they would have something like a medallion, like as a necklace, or a sash or something like that. But I mean, he was from the Order of the Dragon. They would have it in the ring. Maybe they had, that's what that medallion was for. It's royalty. Royalty have medallions. They'll have sashes. They have medallions from war. They have medallions from this club, this club, this club, this association, this association. Wouldn't have been any different for him. Maybe it's just that prestige of royalty, of his position.
Man, it's got to be something, because I mean, you look at any of the vampires from the history of the movies, they all dress almost exactly the same. Some kind of black tuxedo. Huh? Yeah, they're count. Yeah.
Count. So there's a degree of nobility. Right. So maybe that's just something that represents nobility. Sorry?
I'm seeing something on here, and I know I'm seeing something that Romania's Bermuda Triangle. They're calling that haunted forest.
What about your forest?
Romania's
That's right.
Bermuda Triangle. That's
that's what we were talking about.
Right. Stuff happened to you there a lot. Yeah, definitely. Do you want to add some more about that? Is there other stuff?
That was an interesting night. We were there on the night of a supermoon, and people would say, "Oh, you just want to go there to get the full effect." I'm like, "No, man, it's 4-kilometer walk in. I want to find my way back out." In the middle of the night, when something hands me my own rear end. How about that? So we basically went in very early on, and not knowing what to expect, because the forest itself, what people don't realize is the forest itself has a lot of different, magnetic anomalies, and it's got like the electromagnetic field changes quite a bit. There's that droning sound that can be heard. Again, people have been physically attacked in the forest. People see UFOs. People, they get burn marks, scratch marks. They get pushed. They get like just lifted up. I mean, there have been a couple of shows that filmed there, and even then it was the University of Cluj who did most of the filming on behalf of the shows. Like, it's just, we were actually about 3 days behind a popular paranormal show who, kind of had a little meltdown in the forest. I'm like, and I had a nap. Suck it up, Buttercup. Come on. Like, seriously. But going in there, it was, we went in with a lot of time just to get our bearings. I wanted to know where everything was. So if you do have to make a quick exit for whatever reason, you know where you're going. It is a long way up. So this was a working vacation for me. We just thought, we're here. Let's just check it out. Let's see if it's everything that it's cut out to be. So one of the girls, she says, I'm going to go to each entrance. I'm going to do like a voice recording and do maybe just like check out there's a lot of magnetic fluctuations in there. Like I said, so you just want to check that out because that'll knock out your cell phones, which it did. That'll knock out everything. And then you're kind of a sitting duck with no cell phones. At the time, she had an iPhone 4. That is all we were left with. That and the freaking little Hack Shack Ghost Box. That's it. All of our equipment, batteries got drained, knocked out, electronic anomalies, it's fluctuations, magnetics, logical. So at one point, she gets to one entrance. And I'm sitting here, and we had a friend of ours with us, and he was total skeptic, which is perfect. Because so I know you want everybody's perspective, right? It's just it's easy for things to run away. Like your mind can run away very easily in a place like that, especially if they're really late at night. It's this dark forest. Luckily, though, there just weren't any sounds. It's really weird like that. So it's not like you could hear something going off and going, oh, that could be a wolf, or that could be. There's nothing like that. There's this droning sound. That was it. So anyway, we're watching her. Oh, thunderstorm. Very nice. And this tree, she hears this cracking. And Mel and I are standing there looking at her, and there's a tree behind her. And it had a bark on it about this big. It's not a twig, and it starts cracking. It's like something's pushing down on it behind her. And she's like, I'm really feeling a lot of tightness in my chest right now. And we're like, yeah, we bet you are feeling something. And all of a sudden it snaps back up like this and just, almost gives her heart failure. But I'm thinking, okay, I've never seen shit like that. That's pretty freaking amazing. So the night goes on, and all of a sudden, we're like, okay, we're up here. Let's just play around and see what's going on. Like, we're not going to just stand around, and what do you do? There's nothing else to do. So we turn on the Hack Shack, whatever. And all of a sudden, the spirits are all talking, answering questions. And one basically, is trying to say, like, leave, you should go, blah, blah, blah. And this big growl comes through the box. Now, we're not getting any frequencies from anywhere. No radio stations, nothing. Like, there's nothing up there. So anything that's coming in is pretty much something from the ether, whatever, because there's nowhere it could grab a signal. And, she turns around and yips off, like, nobody's talking to you, whatever, right? And all of a sudden, the box, the spirit voice comes out and says, go now, run. I'm like, I'm not going to run, but I will gracefully leave, and yeah, I did not run. No, it's not going to be a thing. But as we did that, the skeptical guy he points and he goes, I don't think that's supposed to happen. I turn around, and the frickin' tree line, it looks like something's walking over it. It's a tree line looking like it's folding down onto itself in one narrow area. Now, when the skeptical guy points it out, you're onto something, because they don't believe anything. And I went,
that's
yeah, and
then that's when I would run. Yeah,
now run. We're like, oh, yeah, okay, holy shit. And then we heard another growl, and I'm like, okay. So, we just casually walked out. You're in the middle of the night. You're not going to sit there and like trip over something. Something was behind us the entire way. It was like crunching, just, had like old leaves and stuff on the side of the trail, and you can hear something crunching in. And when we finally got back to the room, which is a brand new modern hotel, by the way, the power doesn't even come on unless you put the card in the wall, and it all lights up. Like, it's all modern, very green sort of deal. And the things that were happening, even at the hotel that night, were just unbelievable. Like, there was something walking at the end of the bed. The phones kept ringing with nobody on them. Things were going on with Adriana upstairs. She goes, what the heck? Like, all the stuff is happening. It was just a whole lot of stuff. Like, I know, because Melissa set up a camera, and I'm just sitting there. I'm just trying to catch up on my emails, because I'm like, holy shit, finally civilization, right? And she's like, are you hearing this? Are you like seeing this all right now? And all you could do is just the camera's doing weird things, and the phone's going off, and you pick it up, there's nobody there. It's like it's a switchboard. Like there's nothing.
Michelle, the whole time you're saying the story, your camera has been losing clarity. It's really strange. You were in focus fine, and then this story about this entity or whatever, your whole camera has gone all wrong.
Maybe Vlad's excited. I don't know.
Maybe. There's
don't know.
something is in there with me. So.
I got nothing.
Is that chainmail behind you, or is that like
yes.
okay?
Yes,
that's what I thought it was. Cool.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's my Templar lineage.
Nice.
So yeah, but yeah, it was strange. It followed back, whatever it was, followed back because I won't lie, we did come back with soil. I had a long list of people. Bring me back some soil from the Haunted Forest. All right.
Well, you're coughing.
Oh yeah, sure, whatever. Okay, I brought everybody back soil. They're all happy, but the girls brought back a couple of rocks, and anyway, one was a gift to give to somebody else who wanted one, a friend of a friend, and that woman had like terrible things going on at her place. She finally just said, you know what, just give it back, like whatever, just take it back. Everything stopped. As soon as Mel took it back, all the activity there stopped. The girls were having things interfering with their phone calls. They were having like issues with lights going on and off, like for probably about a couple of months after that. And then all of a sudden, everything just stopped as soon as it had started. So I don't know, what is up there? A lot of people believe there is a portal. People come in and out of it. The locals have all kinds of stories about it. There's a reason it's in a no-fly zone, which we didn't know until we got back. I'm like, we really need to investigate this place a little bit more. Like, I'm curious now about the history of all of it. And, and people get attacked up there like fiercely. Burn marks, they get scratches, they're nauseous, they're full of anxiety, they break into rashes and migraines, and it's just like none of that happened. But I'm just like, obviously are we dealing with mindset that people just believe it so much? All the magnetic anomalies, again, is there a portal? Is this a landing spot? Is there a base underground? Like, who the crap knows? But it's pretty interesting, and it doesn't disappoint.
Sounds like it. Sounds really amazing for sure. And
it was different.
For sure. And so is there any time that was where you were scared during that? Were there any other kind of encounters that shook you up?
No, I don't really shake up. That to me was a sort of exciting. My one other experience, when I was in Bran, spent the night at this villa, and something called my name. It was probably like 6 a.m, and I was there bunking with Melissa, and I was sharing a room, and she's out cold. This girl, you'd have to like throw a freaking bucket of cold water on her. She'd probably just kind of go, "What was that?" Like, she's just a sound sleeper. I'm not. So I heard something right in my face go, Michelle. I was like looking around, I'm like, Melissa, what do you want? But meanwhile, she's like gone, and I'm like, oh, I'm completely like awake alone right now. Melissa's gone. And I mean, it was just right in my face. That's happened to me a couple of times while I was in Romania at different locations.
It's definitely great. I would love to visit there sometime. Is there any other stories that stand out that you'd like to tell that come to mind, or anything else?
Well, not for Romania. That's pretty much it. The forest is the one everybody's real curious about. There've been 2 TV shows done on that experience. I think it's just because there you go. Yeah, Bran Castle.
Bran Castle. That's a cool place.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's pretty beautiful. Untouched for the most part. They've done a really good job of keeping it up. It's got a lot of furniture from the royal family that's there, and I think there's the princess is buried on that land at the back. So you're just not allowed. You don't have access to it, but she is there.
Cool. Is there any truth to like the will-o-wisp lights? Like, I know they have that in the movie, but is there something to those like weird lights that they show, like the fairy lights or whatever that you maybe see in the forest? Yeah, like they're on the ground or something. I know they're in the movie for sure. The Francis Ford Coppola.
Well, I know that again in the forest, there are a lot of reports of little lights that go down along the ground, and they can see them going through the trees. So maybe that's a thing. Maybe they've just sort of incorporated the different events that have been spoken of throughout the country. There's a lot of different folklore in that country. The werewolves, of course, are like that's huge in a certain part. It's funny because you tend to get that a lot near Brasov, which is primarily German culture there, Romanian German, because realistically in Germany, there's a lot of culture, like there's a lot of belief system in that. There's a lot of stories there about werewolves. Lots of wishes.
Was there
Thank you,
any
Pedro.
hairy man stuff, Bigfoot stuff, big vampire Bigfoots?
They do. Bigfoot is all over the world,
It's
all over the
everywhere.
world. Yeah, they just go under different names. That forest, honestly, it's so dense. When you look at it, even up on top of the hill, because I could see it from my hotel room, I just sat there looking at it, just been like, it's so dense. It's just so big. Anything could be in there. People go in there, have all these experiences, yet the one thing they never seem to speak about is wildlife in that area at all. I mean, Romania is known for its bears and its wolves, and it's just very, very strange.
It's definitely alluring for sure. I know there's some Peter Moon books about Transylvania with someone. I can't remember exactly what it was. Transylvania Sunrise or something weird. I'd have to look them up, but for some reason I was remembering that. Transylvania Sunrise. Oh, I think it's just a thriller or something that I'm thinking of. But I know Peter Moon, who I've had on about Montauk and stuff, had something to do with it. A secret initiation into the mysterious land of gods. Okay, I see. This is archaeology kind of books. I was just remembering that for some reason and looked it up really quick. But are you planning on going back at any point? Is that something you want to do in the future?
Oh, it's always been my intention to go back. See Pedro on Facebook. That's right. Underground bases are, yeah, in the mountain. I'm sure of it. But it's always been my intention to go back and spend the full night, in the forest, because it's definitely intrigued me. And now that I have an idea what to expect there, I would like to investigate that further. And I don't mean like paranormally investigate. I mean, just go in there and dig a little deeper. Like the area itself, I believe used to have a lake up there, like, 16,000 years ago, there would have been a lake up there and like a community up there. And it's just interesting. Like, what is with the anomalies? That has to come from underneath. So there's a lot of digging. I research historically a lot different now than what I did then, even though it wasn't all that long ago. Like you just learn how to do things a bit differently when you're trying to find something that's not meant to be found.
Here's the thing I found about scholomance, and you may want to look this up because you or ask someone, you'd probably learn more about it than I ever could. But it's spelled Scholomance. And in Wikipedia, here's what it says. The Scholomance was a fabled school of black magic in Romania, especially in the region of Transylvania, which was run by the devil, according to folkloric accounts. The school enrolled about 10 students to become the Solomonary. Courses taught included the speech of animals and magic spells. One of the graduates was chosen by the devil to be a weather maker or tasked with riding a dragon to control the weather. What the hell is this? I know
I
they're
want
acting
a
like
dragon.
I know, right? It's like
I'll do it for the dragon.
Harry Potter.
I know.
Like Vlad meets Harry Potter or something.
I'll take one for the team and check it out if I can have a dragon.
Here's something. The root of it, early source of it, Transylvania Superstitions, 1885, by Scottish author Emily Gerard. So that's where it came from, but I don't know much about it. But I'm always digging because it's so weird. It's so weird. Yeah, it sounds interesting for sure. So, definitely.
Pedro, I know some agencies in the U.S. that know it's there. Yeah. Inbox me. I want in on that.
Yeah. There's a secret dark arts Harry Potter school. I don't even like Harry Potter, so I should quit making that reference, really. But it's still pretty interesting.
It is a really interesting place. There is a lot of history there. I mean, it goes back, hundreds and hundreds of years. And I think for anybody who wants an experience where time stands still and you really want to live and see what Vlad saw, where he lived, where he walked, where he had all of these experiences. You can even go to the battlefield. It's all there. If you want that experience and you can do it very inexpensively, definitely do it. I mean, I'd love to go back. Always my intention. It's always a place that's been very near and dear to me. And a lot, I mean, it has to do with the landscape and it has to do with the people. They're just, Romanians are just really, really nice people. Like on an average, I didn't run into anybody that I had issues with at all. They were very informative, happy to ask questions. Sometimes I'm sure they're like, okay, let's go with that. They're very patient.
I saw something where he was one of the first people to use gunpowder. I didn't know that. I just read that somewhere. I guess he used cannons. I don't think guns, probably cannons, I would guess, or something like that. That's interesting. Vlad with cannons.
They had pistols and stuff back then, gunpowder pistols, and
Oh,
but I think
okay.
the sword was still the way to go,
Yeah.
So I mean, there is a museum in Romania. I can't remember where in Romania it is. I'd have to look it up. That has his his sword, allegedly, and his tunic and things like that. So it's pretty wicked to see, the helmet and some of these, because you're going back, into the 1500s, things are still very easily preserved, like go way, way back, but you do see a lot of these places you go to. You can see a lot of the different weapons and stuff, especially in Hundora, like it's fascinating.
Yeah, and way back then, the gunpowder itself wasn't that cleanly refined. That there were no ballistics, so that they were not very accurate, except at point blank range. I mean, we're talking 3-4 feet away, and even then, some of the armor was so strong that the lead pellets would just bounce off the breastplate. So the main weapons are going to be your swords, axes, hammers, pole arms, and stuff like that. I mean, even through the Civil War, there were people still using breastplates in the Civil War and halberds and pole arms. So the guns didn't get good until just before the cowboy times in the Civil War, at the end of the Civil War. So way back then,
1812. You know how long it would take you to get one shot off? And then you get a freaking reload. It's like you're gone after that.
That's where we got the Minutemen. Is from the Revolutionary War through the Second Revolutionary War, 1812. Is if you weren't good enough to get off a shot every minute, you weren't on the front lines. You were in the rear with the gear, or you were charging the cannons and getting your head blown off.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good strategy. We don't want to mix the front line and the next line to reload.
That's where the name cannon fodder comes from. If you weren't any good, you charged the cannons and you became fodder for the cannons. So while they're shooting at you, the good guys can come around and flank them.
There you go. So everybody's got a role to play.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Michelle, I know you're doing Joe's show next. I want to thank you so much. And Michelle's radio show's The Outer Rim. Make sure you check it out. Great show on the network. And I've enjoyed it so much. Thank you very much. I actually said a little prayer that my internet wouldn't mess up. So look.
Well, there you go.
Ironically,
it's like, you're not messing with Jeffrey's internet tonight. Jewel.
No, it's a lot of
I
fun,
love Vlad the Impaler. Love it. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Thanks, Michelle.
Have a great night. Thank you.
Good luck with JoJo. All right. Good night.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. You're listening to United Public Radio. And a long time ago, we had Victor Foya on about Vlad the Impaler, but somehow that show got messed up. But he was on before, and there was a good one on Halloween. I need to get him back. But he wears an eye patch because something, I don't know what happened to him, but he's from Romania. Were you here for that one?
Yeah, that was you and I. Yeah, that was a good show.
I know Diesel did one with me, too. Something happened, I don't remember, but the tech-wise stuff, I don't remember exactly. But he'll come back anytime, I'm sure. He writes like historical fiction. He tries to get it right, but I'm sure he takes some liberties like anyone would with fiction. But the story, of course, is a very amazing. And I don't know. I've always felt the connection. I don't know what it is exactly, but I dig it. I'd go to Transylvania. I've never been on a plane. I might wing it for that one, buddy. That sounds like fun.
Yeah. I'd love to go. I mean, remember a couple of years ago, there was that contest or something on Facebook that you had a chance to win a night to stay in a coffin overnight at a weekend stay at one of Tepes's castles, which would have been really, really cool.
And you stay in a coffin? What you talking about, Willis?
Yeah, don't you remember we both were into that? There was either a Facebook giveaway or some sort of internet giveaway where you win a weekend at Vlad's temple castle, and they were going to put you up in a coffin for the weekend.
I remember something like that, but I don't remember where or anything.
Yeah, it was a couple years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, probably.
I know.
But the thing that's cool about Tepish is that everyone has these incorrect assumptions about him, and Michelle brought up most of them, like the fact that he was taken away as a kid with the Turks and just tortured and abused, and comes back and revitalizes his country as a young man. That's kind of a hero. That's superhero status, really. But a lot of people have the wrong impression of him.
Yeah, well, that was put out by the mongrel, the enemy, pretty much. The mongrels.
Yeah, those who win.
The Ottomans. I don't know. I'm sure that the Germans, she said.
Yeah.
Which we should ask a little more about that, but I've heard similar things about Rome too. But he was supposedly like a hero to them, but they betrayed him in the last moment or something, didn't send reinforcements or something like that. But the story's fascinating. You can feel it. It's powerful, or something powerful and mythic about it. I always say we need Vlad the Impaler as a leader instead of these candy butts we have now that are just like old geezers that are selfish. We need someone that kicks butt. The return of Vlad the Impaler. I interviewed a guy a long time ago when we first did the show that claimed he was him, and it was just he was crazy, but I don't even know if that dude's still alive. He claimed he was a real vampire and was running for president or something. I don't think he won, but
if you really think about it, Vlad is the vampire. I mean, he was what, 1400s, 1500s, and we're now 5,000 years, 5,000 years later, 6,000 years later, and we're still talking about this guy. He's been dead for 800 years.
I've always wondered, for some reason, I was writing fiction stuff about him, and I tied in reptilian aliens for some reason. Like some weird, like that was the Order of the Dragon, like he was reptilian or something weird and came back as like a reptoid. Nobody steal that idea. I might do it one year again. Maybe not. Maybe. Who knows? But have you ever seen the movie?
Hollywood needs some good ideas. Don't give them out to them, though.
I know, for sure. Have you seen A Quiet Place? Have you seen the movie A Quiet Place?
A Quiet Place? No, I don't think so.
It's a great alien invasion movie. Part 2 just came out at the theater, and it's got great reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. Both of them do, like 90% or more. And basically, it's about this. These people are just chilling, a normal day in America and the world, and these aliens come, and then they just start reaping people. Like they have these crazy things on their hands. They just kill you. I don't even know if they eat you. But the problem with it is it's called A Quiet Place, is because if they hear any noise, that's how they get you. You can't make noise. You have to walk barefoot. You can't. If you make any noise, they come and get you and kill you.
I saw the trailers for that.
It's really good.
I never saw it.
I just saw the second one at the theater. It's worth watching. I'm telling you, it's to surprise you. You don't find many horror alien invasion movies with high reviews. Both of them. Both movies have like a 96 or something on Rotten Tomato. Emily Blunt's in it. John, I forget his name, starts with a K, but they're really good. It was good. That one at the theater, buddy, it would induce some panic for sure. Like there's some scenes that just are crazy. These things just come down, destroy cars, and eat your family in front of you. But kind of remind me of Nephilim, like the Great Celestial Harvest. One thing I've noticed with a lot of these things, like Stranger Things, and what was that other movie? I forget, Rune or something. I'd have to look it up. Some Norse movie that was on Netflix with some creature. But anyway, a lot of these creatures in these movies look like the same alien. Like they have this weird, like the ones in the Quiet Place look like Stranger Things. I know there's been other ones that they look similar. It's like, are they trying to tell us something, that something's about to come down here and harvest and eat us? Like all these, like, or maybe the people just aren't that creative and they're just all making the aliens look the same. I don't know, but the aliens look cool. But they did look kind of like the Stranger Things weird thing that comes through the portal or whatever. The Great Celestial Harvest is coming. The Purge, the alien purge. They will eat you for dinner. But it was good. I haven't been to the theater in a long time, but I went yesterday and saw that with Christina. But it was really good. You should check them out if you get a chance. I know the first one's out there, but the second one's at the
first
theater.
one I should probably get on one of the streaming channels. And it's John Krasinski who's in that with Emily Blunt.
Yeah, It's good. They're both good for sure. No doubt about it. I don't know when Dune's coming out. I don't think it's coming to HBO Max anymore. That ain't right.
Um, I thought it was coming out in December or November of this year.
It's not
Unless,
going to be on HBO Max.
no? Oh, that sucks.
For some reason, I
I
think
was
they
looking
said
forward to
it's not.
watching that. 2021 is this still the date? It's October 22nd.
Now they're
So
saying it will be, so I don't know. I said, oh, it will no longer premiere simultaneous on HBO Max. They're fighting over it for some reason.
um,
So
so
who
maybe
knows?
it'll go to the theaters first before it goes to the streaming. But either way,
My only problem with it is it's long. I don't like to have to go to the restroom during a movie. Luckily, Quiet Place was only an hour and 37 minutes, so I was okay.
yeah.
But those ones that start going to 220 and whatever, like Lord of the Rings and stuff, I can't do it, bro. Y'all got to add a pee mechanism into these chairs or something
Well,
because I can't hang.
it would be more efficient if the movies would add in an intermission. Like way back when movies really started, you didn't go there for one show. You went there for the whole afternoon. You paid 50 cents or whatever. You'd watch a string of cartoons. You'd watch a string of newsreels about what happened in World War II. And then you'd have an intermission. You go out and get some more popcorn, go to the bathroom, get some candy, whatever. Then you come back for the main theater, the main event, which was usually like a 45-minute thing. And you would usually get last week's event because they were serialized movies. So it was like part 1, part 2, part 3, part 45. So you'd rewatch part 7, have another intermission, and then come back for part 8, which was the new part that week. And, that was the afternoon. You didn't just go there and watch one movie and leave. You were there all day. So if they would put an intermission, you have a movie that's 2.5 hours long, put an intermission halfway through. Let me go pee for 5 minutes. Because I'll sit there until I'm about to pee the theater seat because I don't want to miss anything.
Exactly. It's rough. It's rough. I know I've been watching Loki. It's pretty good. Have you seen Loki yet on Disney?
I am ensconced here in a beautiful cabin in the woods. It's actually a Comfort Inn in Pennsylvania. So I haven't plugged my Roku into the television. So I haven't. So when I settled on the house today. So I got a house and I'll start moving in on the 1st.
Nice.
Yeah. I am. Do I look different? I'm a homeowner now. When I get moved into the house and the dust settles, I'm gonna plug the Roku back in and start watching. I'll just watch the whole thing all in one afternoon, probably.
And next week there's no show, July 2nd, and we'll be back on the 9th. 4th of July is on a Sunday, so we're gonna do a little 3-ender weekend there. So we'll be back on the 9th, 4th of July. The 4th of July, 4 gathered here on the 4th of July. Get some fireworks. But
I live in a fireworks running state now, so I can buy them full works, everything.
They sell
Maryland,
them
you're only allowed to have sparklers. We
sell them at Walmart here.
Yeah, they're selling them all over the place here. Yeah.
Cool. But we'll be back the 9th, and I'd have to actually look up that guest because my brain dead right now. But I was out all last night. I went to a bar, and these redneck dudes were funny, and they wouldn't stop talking. But it was the supermoon was out. It was weird because me and Christina were sitting on this brick wall, and these ladies go, "Do you see that dead black cat right there? Look down, there's a dead black cat right at almost at her feet." And it's like, no, I didn't, but thanks for letting me know. Dead black cat. Damn it. It was depressing, but I meant to call the city today to hopefully someone did. It was depressing, but it was just weird because you didn't see it.
You just recently lost Jack, and I lost my. You remember? Well, the thing weird. You bring up the black cat. You lost Jack a little bit ago. Then right after Jack went, I lost one of my cats, and she was a black cat. So I just picked her ashes up this afternoon. So that's weird. That's synchronicity. Maybe my cat was coming to say hi to you on her way to go visit Jack. I don't know.
Maybe so. I know we had said that. So someone either hit it with a car. I don't know. It was just near this little kids' playground. It's kind of creepy. Hopefully they cleaned it up. I would hope so. Little old ladies were like, "Call the city." I'm sure someone did. I hope. But it was definitely creepy. Call the city. But yeah, I just got this for Jack. If you need a memorial, I'm sure they have a cat one on Amazon. It's like a solar power thing, and it glows and does stuff. May just keep it and use it as like a little memorial, a travel memorial for my dog. and he's buried in Gracefield. But man, it sucks. You just don't get over it. Like I've had weird things
No,
where I thought I'd seen him cross by.
it's hard. I got the Biddy in a little box, so they got her ashes in like a little ornate like carrying box, and they made a clay imprint of her paw, and they've got a little plaque to put on the box. So I've got 3 others that have passed that are also in little boxes there with their ashes. So when I go in the ground, I'm going to have at least 4 right now, and I've got 3 more that are still around. So when I get buried, I'm going to have 7, 8 different cat bodies in the coffin with me. So that's going to be fun.
Pharaoh freaking. All right, well we better close out, man. Have a good time, and we'll see you. You're back with us on the 9th, so we'll see you then. Good night, everybody, and thanks to Joe,
Yep.
thanks to Michelle, thanks to Vlad the Impaler. I bid you welcome. Listen to the children of the night. Listen to the beautiful music they make. I have his nose, sort of. Watch. Maybe a little. All right. Good night, everybody. United Public Radio. Good night.
Good night.